Take a look at this account. This creator has over 341,000 subscribers. These videos are getting thousands of views. Let's take a look at another account. This creator has over 332,000 subscribers, and most of these videos are getting millions of views. There are tons of creators making videos getting millions of views on these short form AI storyteller videos. And I have built an automation that creates these videos for you with just a couple button clicks. Here's another similar account. Let's just slide down and take a look at this first video. It has 100,000 views.
When I was 8, I stayed up late at night watching television. My mother always told me never to turn on the television exactly at 4:44 a.m. If you ever did, you would hear clicks and heavy breathing in the next room. If you do check, a black shadow with red eyes.
Okay, so you get the idea here. Pretty simple images with some AI voiceover and some background music. So you might have seen my last video where I actually demo this automation and show you how it works, show you the video that gets produced. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you step by step how to build this entire automation from scratch. If you haven't seen my last video, I'll give you a quick demo of what this thing can do. Come into my automation. So I'm going to create a new story. Creepy glasses. I'll choose an orientation, a writer, image style, paste my story here. I'll set my settings and hit go. Creating the audio, it'll create the images, create the video. Then we can put our full video together. Just copy and paste the music from my last video. All the clips are done. I'll click assemble. Let's wait a couple more seconds and get our finished video. Here's the finished video. Let's take a look at the final product.
He then found his mom's glasses under the bed. They seemed alive and curious. He put them on, reality twisted. In the mirror, an eerie reflection showed his mother with wide eyes and a silent scream. Ethan called out to her, but she didn't hear him. A force seemed to pull her reflection away. Frightened, Ethan tore the glasses off as his mom unknowingly continued smiling. That night he wore them again. The bedroom revealed a dark reality. His mother lay on the bed. Her reflection was trapped by shadowy fingers. He begged her not to sleep, eyes filled with tears. Next morning she was missing. His father's comfort felt hollow with the cracked lenses, whispering secrets.
There it is, guys. Pretty amazing what we can do with just a couple button clicks. Let's dive into it. All right, jumping straight into this build. Here I am in my Airtable workspace. I'm going to come up here to create a new base, click start from scratch. I'm going to close down all of the excess getting started stuff and delete out these 3 default fields. Right click on them and delete 3 fields. Now we've got a blank base to start with. I'll come up here to name my base AI automated faceless story generator full step by step. These titles get longer and longer. So I'm going to set the color of this one. I'll just set it to gray. And now we have a blank base to start with. Great. Let's build out this first table. I'll come up here to rename the table, double click on it, name it stories, click save. I'll name this first grid view all stories. You can double click on it and rename it, then hit enter on the keyboard. Let's name this first primary field. We can double click on it, name it story name and click save. Now we can start adding some new fields. So I'm going to click this button a bunch of times to add some new fields in here. Let's click the plus to add a new field. First field we'll call video orientation. This will be a single select dropdown. For the dropdown options, we can click this button to add an option. First one will be portrait, then landscape, then square. You could add in whatever orientations you want. If you want different aspect ratios for your videos, we can add them in here. I'll just keep it simple and we'll have a 9:16 portrait, a 16:9 landscape, and a 1:1 square video orientation. You can click the little icon here to change the color, just like that. Click create field. Let's move on to the next field. We'll click this plus to create a new field. This will be a formula field. We can scroll down, choose formula. Now, you're going to want to copy and paste what I have in here. I'll paste it now. There it is. Go ahead, pause the video and type this out. Or if you don't want to type this out, you can take this over to ChatGPT. Just take a screenshot of this formula, drop it into ChatGPT and say, please write out this formula. There it is. You can copy the code and paste that in right here. We'll name this field aspect ratio. So you can see these aspect ratios we have in here. If the video orientation is set to portrait, we'll have this aspect ratio. If it is set to landscape will have this aspect ratio and so on. So you can add in a list of different aspect ratios in this format for this formula to put in any aspect ratios that you want. We'll keep it at these 3 for now. Click create field. Just to test that out, I'll choose a video orientation for one of these 3 records here. Drop that down. We'll choose landscape, and that aspect ratio pops up just like that. Let's create the next field. Click the plus. We'll call this Flux Realism Image Size. When we're using the Flux Realism model via the API, we need a specific variable for that model to use. So we'll just input those variables into here. This will be a formula field. Choose formula, and you can copy and paste what I have here. There it is. Paste that in there just like that. You can see it's very similar to the other formula field. When we set video orientation to portrait, we'll get this variable. When we set it to landscape, we'll get this variable, and so on. You could add in all the variables. Now, the only trick here is knowing what variables this Flux Realism model uses. We'll get to that later on, but you can start with this for now. We'll leave it at that. Click create field, and we can see that variable pop up because we have the video orientation set. If I come into the video orientation and change that orientation, we can see that variable changes just like that. Let's click the plus to create the next field. We'll call this input story source here. You'll be able to paste stories into this field or simply type in a prompt that you want a story to be generated from, and this field will take that input and create the story for you for your video. This field will be a long text. Click create field. Click the plus to create the next field. This next one is not necessary for the automation, but we can add it in for record purposes. We can put in created time and just click create field. That'll show the created time for all of our records. Click the plus to create the next field. Same thing, we don't need this one for automation, but we can leave it in here for record purposes. This will be last modified time. Click create field, and that pops up the last modified time for each record. Since we don't need these 2 fields for the build, I'll just click on both of them, holding shift, right click to hide them. Now we can click the plus to create the next field. This one will be a single select drop down. Choose that. This is called auto settings. For the selection options, we can type in full auto, semi-auto, and manual. Same thing as before, we can change the colors. Click create field. And the last field we can create at this point, click the plus, create the new field. This will be another formula field. Select that. We'll call this record ID. And in the formula box, just type in REC. That'll pop up this built-in function for the record ID. Click on that. And on the keyboard, the closing parenthesis to finish off that function, then create the field. So that's all we can do in this table for now. We'll have to add in some new tables, fill in that information, and then link to those records in this table. For now, let's create a new grid view. Click the plus here. We'll name this grid view all data, create new view. When you're building out automations, it's nice to have an all data view. We've already hidden some of our fields inside of this all stories view. And so instead of toggling on and toggling back off all of your hidden fields that you don't need to see in a particular view, we can just check this all data view and see some of the information we need for building automations and getting this stuff finished off. Creating that all data field is really for debugging and testing and seeing all of your data at a glance. So we'll stay inside of the new stories view, and we'll come up to create a new table. Click this plus here, create a new table, click start from scratch. We'll call this table generation. Click save. Same thing as before. I'll select all 3 of these fields holding shift, right click on one of them to delete these 3 default fields. Now we can start off with a blank table. For this first grid view, I'll double click on it to rename it generation. And for the primary field, I'll double click the field name and name this story name, then click save. Let's create the next field. Click the plus. This is going to be a long text field. We'll name it voiceover, create the field. Click the plus to create the next field. We'll name this one AI image prompt. This will be a long text field, create the field. Click the plus to create a new field. This will be an attachment. We'll name this image. Click create field. Click the plus to create a new field. We'll name this generation actions. This will be a single select dropdown. Click add option. First option we can name choose action. Second, we can name generate image. The next one, generate audio. The next one is generate video. And the last option is merge audio and video. You can change the colors and create the field. Let's click the plus to create a new field. This will be an attachment field. Name it video. Click create field. Click the plus to create a new field. Name it audio. This will be an attachment field. Click create field. Click the plus to create another field. We'll name this audio plus video. This is an attachment field. Click create field. Click the plus to create a new field. We'll name this request ID. This will be a long text field. Click create field. And for building out the automation, we'll add in 2 more. Click the plus, scroll down. This will be created time, create the field. And the last one we can do for now, click the plus, call this record ID. This will be a formula field. Type into the formula box REC. Select that built-in record ID function. Close it off with the closing parenthesis. Type it in on the keyboard to finish it off and create the field. Great, so that is all we can do for now. We will actually start linking these 2 tables together. Okay, so after our primary field here in the generation table, I want to add a new record. So I'll right click on the primary field, right click on this field name and choose insert right. This will create a new field in between the primary field story name and the voiceover field right here. This field, I'll choose link to another record. And we want to link to our stories table. Click on that. Toggle off, allow linking to multiple records. Create field. This will give us the option to look up some other fields from the stories table. So we want to look up the video orientation. You can follow along, toggle these on. Aspect ratio, the flux, realism, image size, the auto settings, and the record ID. Click add 5 fields. Now we've created a link to all of these fields in the stories table. You can drag this out so we can see how these fields automatically got named. Because we named them in the stories table, we can see we have the video orientation from stories, aspect ratio from stories, all of these fields coming from stories. You can click in and rename them what you want, but in this case, we want to know that they're coming from the stories and they are the same thing that we want them to be. You don't need to know what that means yet. Just as an example, I can choose a story from the stories table. Click the plus here. We'll choose our unnamed story that we have a couple of those settings set into, and automatically that story's settings will pop up in our generation table. The orientation, the aspect ratio, this variable for the flux realism model, and the record ID. If we go back into the stories table and we choose the auto settings setting here to full auto, come back into the generation table, we can see that setting has transferred over to the generation table. So that's what we're looking for. Everything looks good. I'll clear out this unnamed story by clicking the X right here. That'll get rid of that record in this row. What we can do now is hide all of these fields in the generation table. So I'll click on all of these fields, holding shift on the keyboard, right click on one of them and hide 6 fields. Now again, they're still in this table, we just can't see them. What we're gonna do is create another grid view. Click the plus down here, name it all data. And if we need to refer to anything that we can't see, we have this view where we can see all of our data pop up right there. Okay, great. Let's move on to the next table. Come up here, click the plus to create a new table. Click start from scratch. We'll call this assembly. Click save. Same thing. I'll click on these 3 default fields, holding shift on the keyboard, right click on one of them and delete 3 fields. I'll name this grid view assembly. I'll name the primary field, double click on it, ID. This we can set to an auto number field. Choose that, click save, and I'll just resize this field name down like that. Click the plus to create a new field. This will be an attachment field. Click on that, name it music, click create field, click the plus to create a new field, name it assemble. This will be a checkbox field. Click on that. For the style of the checkbox, it doesn't matter at all. I like to use this little thumbs up. You can choose whatever you want and make sure the default is set to unchecked versus checked. We want that unchecked. Click create field, click the plus to create a new field. Call this combined video. This will be an attachment field. Create the field, click the plus to create a new field. We'll call this finished video. This will be an attachment field. Click create field. Now we're gonna have to link up some of our other tables to this table here. So let's start off. Oh, before we do that, let's create our record ID field. Click the plus to create a new field. Name this one record ID. Scroll down. This will be a formula field. In the formula box, type in REC, you can choose the built-in function, close it off with the last parenthesis, click create field. Now we can start linking up some other records to this table. So this linkage is gonna be a little complex. In the generation tab, we're already linking to a story. And the way the automation works is it's gonna build out this table with a bunch of different records all linked to the same story. Now, since multiple records are going to be linking to the same story, we need to pull all of the merged audio and video files from the generation tab and insert them back into that story. Don't worry if that doesn't make sense. You can just follow along and we'll put it together. So I'm going to delete out these records I put in here. I'm going to jump back into the stories table. You can follow along now. In the stories table, we're going to link to the generation table, but we already established that link in the generation table. So if we check all data, scroll down to the end, we can see we have that linked record already created for us in the stories table. So if I right click on this field name here and click add lookup fields, we can add new fields to this connection inside of the stories table. I will add the merged audio plus video field from the generation table. Click add one field. This is the beauty and magic of using Airtable, creating linked records like this. Don't worry if it is too complex to understand. You'll get the hang of it doing automations just like this. So now all of those records in the generation table that are linked to a particular story, all of those videos will pop up in a single record right here. That's what we want. So now we have that generation table linking to the stories, and we'll need to link this field to the assembly table. I'll jump into the assembly table and we can start creating links to the stories table. All right, so let's first create that linked record. I'm gonna right click on the ID field, say insert right. This will be a link to another record. I wanna link to the stories table, toggle off, allow linking to multiple records, create the field. Now we can choose the fields we want to link. And if we scroll down, it'll be that new audio plus video field from the generation table. Let's check that and add one field. I'll resize these fields a little bit so we can see what this one ended up being named. Audio plus video from the generation table that is linked to the stories table, and now we're getting it from the stories table. All right, so this linkage, pretty complex, but again, this is the magic of using Airtable and doing these complex manipulations of data. So that finishes off the assembly table. What I'm gonna do is hide these two records. We don't actually need to see them. I'll click on both, holding shift, right click, hide two fields, and I'll add the all data view down here. Click the plus to create a new grid view, name it all data, and we can see them back there, these two fields right there. Excellent job so far. Guys, we are cruising through this automation. Moving on to the story writers table. Let's click on the plus up here to create a new table. Click start from scratch. We'll name this story writers, click save. I'll delete out the 3 default views. I'll rename the grid view writers and leave the primary field called name. All right, click the plus to create a new field. Call this writer instructions. This will be a long text. Create the field. Click the plus to create a new field. Name this record ID. Probably guessed it. This is going to be a formula field. Type in here REC. Finish off that formula with the parenthesis. Click create field, and this table is finished, but we need to create a link to it back in the stories table. So let's jump back over to the stories table and we'll add in some new fields here to connect to that story writers table. So I'm in the all data view just so I can place these new fields in the right spot, keep everything nice and organized. So I want to be in all data to see my hidden fields, and I want to add the new fields after this flex realism. I'll expand this out. Flex realism image size formula field. I'll right click on that, say insert right. This will be a link to another record, but we're going to name this one choose writer. Instead of having the default field name, I want to name this field choose writer, but we're going to link to the story writers table. Toggle off allow linking to multiple records. Click create field. It's going to ask us if we want any lookup fields. Let's add the writer instructions. Click add field. Now we've got the choose writer field and the writer instructions from the choose writer connected field here. Again, don't worry if connected records are confusing. What we're going to do is name this field double click on it, story writer instructions, and click save. There we go. So that is it for the story writers and the connection to the stories table. Let's move on to the next table. We're going to click the plus to create a new table, click start from scratch. This table will name prompt presets. Click save, delete out the default fields. I'll name this primary field, double click on it, preset name, click save. Let's click the plus to create a new field. You can name this type. It's a single select dropdown. For the first option, you can say image preset. For the second one, we can say style preset. You'll have to play around with your preset styles and all of the preset prompts you can add in here, obviously for your specific style and your specific videos you want to create. But just for fun, we can see this built out with these 3 preset types. So I'll change the color and create the field. Let's click the plus to create a new field. This will be called prompt, and this will be a long text. Create the field. Great, same thing as we did with the story writers. We're gonna connect this table to the stories table in the same way. So I'm gonna jump back over to the stories table, and in all data view, I wanna add this connected record right after the writers here before the input story source. So I'm gonna right click on this field name, say insert right. This will be a link to another record, but we want to name this one choose image style. This will be a link to another record. We're going to link to the prompt presets. Toggle off, allow linking to multiple records. Click create field, and we'll add the type and the prompt. Toggle those on and click add to fields. Okay, now we can rename these 2 fields to something simplified. Let's double click on this field name, delete this out and just name it type, click save. We'll double click on this field name, delete this out and name it prompt preset, click save. Now we'll actually have our written prompt pop up here and the style label pop up here in the type. Great, excellent job connecting up these records. Let's actually put some information in here just to start building out these tables with what we're going to need. So in the story writers table, let's jump back into there. We're going to add the types of writers that you'll need for your actual stories. Now, this is going to take some practice and prompt engineering to come up with a prompt that will create the stories for you. If you already are creating short form videos in this style, you already have some pretty good ideas of how to generate images, how to generate text using AI prompt engineering. So that's going to be the same step here, is coming up with your own prompts that will generate good stories that you want to create videos from. For now, I'll paste in the ChatGPT assistants that I've created that will write the stories for me. I'll put those assistant prompts up available in the school community, so you'll be able to just copy and paste and throw them back into your own build here. Additionally, if you've gotten to this point and you need a little extra help, I have all of this stuff built out in a pre-made template inside of the school community for download. If you check the link down below, you can find my school community. Once you join, you'll have access to all of my templates, all of my make.com blueprints available for download. In case you get to this point and decide you need those references to work from, learning out this process, having a step-by-step guide, and my finished templates right beside you definitely helps the learning process. So jump over there, check that out if you want to grab those templates and the ChatGPT assistant prompts. I'll go ahead and paste those in here now. For this first story writer, I'll name it News Reporter. The second writer here in the next record down, this is my cryptid storyteller. And my last writing assistant is my fantasy writer. The news reporter instructions, the ChatGPT assistant instructions, I'll just paste into the writer instructions. Again, you'll have access to this full prompt in the school community. I'll paste in my cryptid storyteller instructions into the instructions field for this one, and I'll paste in my fantasy writer instructions for this one. With these story writers in this table is completely finished now. We don't need anything more inside of it. I'm actually going to hide this connected record now. I'll right click on the stories field name, click hide field. I'll create an all data view over here. Click the plus to create a new grid view, name it all data, and the story writers table is completely finished. Let's move on to the prompt presets table. For these prompt presets, you can copy and paste what I have in here. Pretty simple to come up with your own presets, but I will just paste in these here, and you can get the idea of what is required in this table. We're gonna have a preset name that is just for your reference, setting this preset prompt, and you can come up with your own simple preset prompts here. Just as an example, my photograph preset I've labeled the image style. I can label it image for the image style and label these art style, however you want to label these. This type is just for your own reference. This prompt field is really what's going to matter. This is, again, part of prompt engineering, getting this stuff to produce the way that you want. But my photograph preset is going to input into any of these prompts the instructions to create a DSLR camera quality, ultra realistic, highly detailed photograph of, and then the automation will generate the rest of the image prompts. So we're just tailoring those image prompts with these presets from this table. Go ahead and fill this out with a bunch of presets that you might use for your style. Then we can finish off this table completely by hiding this stories field and coming over here. I'll click the plus to create a new grid view and call it all data. Now our prompt presets table is completely finished and we can move on to the next table. All right, come up to the plus to create a new table. Start from scratch. We'll name this table System Automation. This table will handle some of the backend instructions for this entire automation. Let's click Save, delete out the 3 default fields. I'll name this grid view System and leave the primary field called name. Let's click the plus to create a new field. We'll name this System Instructions. This will be a long text field. Can create the field. Let's click the plus to create a new field. We'll name this Version Control. This will be a long text. Create the field. Click the plus to create a new field. This will be single select dropdown. Let's name it System Label. We'll add some options. The first option, we'll call it JSON. The next option, we'll call it research. Next one, call it fact check. And the last one, we'll just call system. Change the color, create the field. In the last field, click the plus, name this record ID. And of course, this is a formula field. Type into the formula box, REC. Finish off that function with the parenthesis, type it in, and create the field. So let's create a 4th record in here. I'll click the plus to just create a new blank record, and I'll label each of these records according to the system label here. So I'm just going to click into this first field in this first record and label it JSON. The next one is research. Next one, fact check, and this last one is system. Now we'll go ahead and name these records. This will be JSON bot, research bot. For this name field, you can name these bots whatever you want. Fact checker bot, and this one is just called system. Now we can enter in these system instructions for each of these bots. For the JSON bot, I'll paste in these instructions here. Again, prompt engineering with ChatGPT to create these AI assistant prompts. I'll have the link to all of these instruction prompts down below. Now for this particular build, we are not going to be adding the research bot or the fact checker bot into this automation. So for now, this entire automation will not be able to do factual stories. If you're creating content that is actually fact-based news reports or any kind of fact-based storytelling, we won't be able to actually research or fact check your information inside of the automation. I'll be adding these later on, so always come back to watch more of my videos, more of my tutorials. You can follow up in the school community with these updates. So we're going to skip on to the system instructions to get that one built out. And that one is a pretty easy one. You can simply copy and paste what I have here. So we're basically telling the ChatGPT system to sound like a human. Great. So you notice this last phrase right here, we're actually going to add a list of phrases that we don't want the system to use. Let's go ahead and do that next. We are done with the system automation table. Let's move on to the next table. Click the plus to create a new table. Start from scratch. We'll name this table Prohibited Language List. Click Save. Delete out these 2 last fields here. We're actually going to leave the notes field. Delete these 2 fields. Let's name the grid view phrases. We'll name this field phrase. Click Save, and we can leave the notes field. So for the phrases here, I have the list of prohibited language. You can check out the link for that. Copy and paste that language list into here. Starting with this first field, I'll paste it, and you want to say yes, expand the table, continue. That will expand all of these records out and fill out this entire list of prohibited phrases that you don't want the AI to use when it's writing the stories. You can write notes here. This note field isn't for any other purpose than actually personal note taking. What I want to do in this field, however, is sort everything by alphabetical order. So I'm going to come up to this sorting option, sort by the phrase, and it is sorted A to Z alphabetical order, just like that. Great, so that is finished. Our prohibited language list is done. Our system automation list is done. Prompt presets, story writers, these are all finished tables. We need to start connecting these tables back up to our other 3 main creation tables right here. Let's dive into that. We are breezing through this build. Let's keep at it. So we need to connect up these tables together. Let's jump into the stories table, and I want to add these connected tables after the prompt preset field and before the input stories source field. Again, I'm in the stories table in all data so we can see everything going on here. I'll right click on the prompt preset field name, click insert. We're going to be getting our system automation bots. So we'll name this one JSON bot. This will be a link to another record. The system automation table, do not allow linking to multiple records. Create the field, and we want to link to system instructions and system label. Add 2 fields. Now I'll just expand out these field names so we can see the full title here. For this one, let's double click on it and name it JSON bot instructions. Click save, and double click on this one to rename it system label and click save. Great, so let's move on to the next system automation. I'll right click on the system label field name, say insert right. This one we can call system. This is a link to another record. System automation. Do not allow linking to multiple records. Create the field, and we'll add the system instructions and the system label. Click add 2 fields. Great. Now we can rename these 2 fields. I'll double click on this one and just call it system instructions. Click save, and we'll just leave this one system label from system. Okay guys, I think that is it. We're gonna rearrange some of this stuff as we go just to keep things organized. By the way, rearranging any of these fields in any order does not affect anything. This is purely for preference on how you like to organize all your fields. For example, this record ID field, I always like to keep at the end. So in case I need to find the record ID, I can just scroll down to the end and find my record IDs, which we will need to do as we build out the automation. So stuff like that to keep in mind, purely organizational, finding all of your fields and records. So I think this looks pretty good, but I'm just gonna rearrange some of this stuff in the all data view here. First of all, I moved the record ID down to the end. I'll grab the generation, the audio video from generation, and the assembly field. Holding shift on the keyboard, grab these 3 fields and drag them down. I wanna put them with all of my other linked fields. So I'll slide them down to the beginning where they should be, and I'll show you what I mean by where they should be. I'll drop them down right here. Okay, so now all of my linked fields are adjacent to one another. I just like to have these in order, keeping everything organized. So what I mean by where they should be is we have the stories table. And so I have my 3 stories fields right here that are pertinent to the beginning of the operations we're going to be doing. Then we have the generation fields right here that comes next, and the assembly fields that comes next. Story writer, prompt presets, and system automation, followed finally by the prohibited language list. So that is still something we need to add in here, is the prohibited language list. The way we're going to do that is linking it to the system automation. So let's jump into the system automation tab. We can see our 2 links that we just created to the stories table right here. I'm going to click on both of these, holding shift, right click, and hide these 2 fields. Right away, come down, add a new grid view, call it all data, create that view, and we can see all our data here with those 2 fields back in there. In the all data view, I'm going to click the plus to create a new field. This will be a link to another record. This will be the prohibited language list. This is the only time where we need to toggle on, leave this on, allow linking to multiple records. This must be toggled on if we want all of the records in the prohibited language list to be linked. Let's create the field, and we could link the phrase. Click add 1 field. Now the way we need to link this up is we need to link it to the system record here. So I'll just expand out these fields so we can see them. Now I'm going to come into the prohibited language list and actually connect all of these records to my system automation. Here's that linked record that pops up. I'll go ahead, click on it, right click on it, hide the field, create a new grid view, name it all data. And in the all data view, we can link up all of these records to a single system automation record. Again, don't worry about knowing what all the linked records means and how to figure it out. This is the most advanced stuff you can do with Airtable. So congratulations if you're making it this far. You're doing excellent. So in the system automation, I'm actually going to drop this down and find my system bot right here. Click on that. We need to connect that system bot to all of these records. So I'm going to drag this little toggle down just like you would in a spreadsheet, Google Sheets or Excel or something like that. Drag this little toggle handle down all the way to the last record and link up all of these records. Okay. If we see what happened there, coming back into system automation, we can see now our prohibited language list and all of the phrases are linked to this single record. If I expand this record now, we're going to see every single one of those phrases as a list. That is what we want. That is the list we've been looking for. And now this prompt will read, do not use the words and phrases in this list. There it is. Now we come back into the regular system view and we don't need to see that list in this view. Now that we have that list connected up, let's come back into the stories table and we can add that lookup table in the system instructions. All right, so here we have our system. We're inputting our system instructions. We have the label. We're going to add one more lookup field to the system here. I'll right click on that, click add lookup fields, and we can add the phrase from the prohibited language list. Check that. Click add one field. Now we have our phrase from the prohibited language list, and I will slide this over just past the system instructions. Slide it out so we can see this full title, but I'm actually going to double click on this, rename it simply prohibited language list. Click save. Now, if we manually insert the system, I'll click the plus, insert the system. We can see the system instructions pop up here and the prohibited language list pop up and the system label. That is perfect. For now, I'm just going to remove this system and we'll continue on. Guys, I think we've done it. I think we've built out all of the tables to completion. We've got lots more to do, lots more coming up. Congratulations making it this far. Let's keep at it. All right, so what we're gonna do next is build out our first couple Airtable automations. We have our data input, and if we've missed anything, we'll come back and add it in as we need it. But I think this looks pretty good, and I think we have our tables built out. So let's come into the automations tab over here. We're gonna start our automations. I'm gonna come up here to name this first automation, new entry to stories. Every time we create a new story, create a new project, this automation will trigger and set some things up for us automatically. We're gonna click here to add a trigger. We'll choose when a record is created. We'll select the table, the stories table, click to add an action. We'll create a record, select a table, the assembly table, click choose field, click stories, click the plus, scroll down and select Airtable record ID. Click add action, click find records. We'll label this description get JSON bot. Let's select the table. System automation. We'll find records based on a condition. Click add condition. The condition is where record ID is, and we need to paste in a record ID. We need to actually find the record ID of JSON bot. So let's jump back into the data. Let's come into system automation, and we finally get to use our record ID field right here. We're in the system view, so I'm going to right click on that field, click hide field, then come into all data, and we can see that record ID. Just for organizational purposes, I'm going to slide my record ID down to the end. There we go, nice and organized, and we need to find JSON bot record ID. Click on that, copy it, let's come back into automations, paste that record ID right here. For the maximum record limit, doesn't really matter. Let's just leave it at 1. Then click add action. We're going to update a record. The record we're going to update, let's select the table, is in the stories table. Record ID, click the plus, select Airtable record ID, choose a field. The field we want to update is our JSON bot field. There it is. Click on that and we'll update it. Click the plus. Let's find a record and we'll scroll down to the field values and the record ID. Great, congratulations. First automation complete. Let's go ahead and toggle it on and we can watch what this one actually does here. Let's jump into the data, jump into stories. Let's find our JSON bot field. There it is. Now we can manually add in items to this field, but we just created the automation that will do that for us every time a new story record is created. So I'm going to create a new story record, wait for that automation to run, and there it is, popped up for us just like that. Our JSON bot is ready to go and do some work inside of this new story. So we've got to do that same process for the system bot. Let's jump back into automations. So we've got all of this action happening. We've got a record being created in assembly. We're updating a record with our JSON bot. We need to update a record with our system bot as well. So I'm going to duplicate this action. Click on the three little dots right here to duplicate action. For the next action, I'll click on that and I'll change the description to get system. Same table, same condition where the record ID is, and we need to find our system record ID. Jump into data, system automation table. Let's find our system record ID. Copy that back into automations, paste that here, delete this one out and paste the new one there and click update. Now we need to update the record. So we can add a new field to be updated, choose a field. We want to update our system field, there it is, and we'll update the system field, click the plus. Let's find a record in the get system action. Scroll down, click field values, scroll down and choose record ID. Now we're getting our system record ID, and one more time we can hit update. Let's go into the data, into the stories, create a new record in the stories table and wait for that automation to run. There it goes. Now we have our JSON bot and our system instructions popping in here automatically, ready to do some work. Great. Let's create another similar automation. Jump into the automations tab and we'll create a new automation. I'll come down here, click the plus to create a new automation. I'll name this new entry to prohibited language list. Click add a trigger. When a record created, let's select the table. In the prohibited language list, click add action, select find records, enter a description here to get system. We'll find a record in the system automation table. We'll find records based on a condition. Click add condition where the record ID, choose record ID. Click this drop down is, and we'll go find that record ID again. Jump into the data, system automation, system record ID, copy that back into automations and paste that right there. You can set the record limit to 1. Click add action. We want to update a record. We're updating a record in the prohibited language list table. Select the record ID, click the plus, choose Airtable record ID. Let's choose the field. The field is the system automation. Click the plus. Let's find a record. Click on that, scroll down, click on field values and click record ID. Excellent. Let's watch what happens now. We'll flip on this automation, jump into the data, come into the prohibited language list. What this automation actually did is every time we add a new record, add a new phrase to our language list, it's automatically going to get added to our system instructions as part of the list of words that we don't want to use. We did that process manually the first time by linking all of our records to the system. That automation is going to automatically link a new one to the system. So let's add in a new record here. We'll just say Z so we can see it pop in at the bottom. And there's the automation automatically linking that new record to our system instructions just like that. So I'm going to delete out this record. That one is good to go. And guys, we are finished with our Airtable automations for now. We are going to dive into make.com, setting up the scenario and building out all of the automations to get this one running. Excellent job getting this far in this video. You guys are rocking it. Let's keep going. Okay, we're going to switch gears and jump over to make.com. Here I am in my make.com dashboard. I'm going to jump up here to create a new scenario. Right away, I'll name this scenario by clicking on the name up here and name it what I want. This is my third time building out this automation from scratch, so I'm just trying to keep things organized with my naming convention. That is what I'll name my project. You can name it whatever you want. And we'll set up our first webhook here. Now we have two options for webhooks. We can use a regular webhook, or Airtable actually has a webhook. If you've used Make and Airtable before or watched some of my videos, you might see I've used them interchangeably. Doesn't really matter. I think for this video, I'll start off with an Airtable webhook since we are building in Airtable primarily. click on Airtable. Anytime you need to find a module in make.com, you can type in the search bar. I'll just type in Air, that pops up Airtable, and I'll click on that. Now to find Airtable's secret little webhook, we have this one right here to watch responses. That is essentially a webhook in disguise, and we can create a new webhook for Airtable. Let's click Add to create a new webhook. Name the webhook whatever you want. I'll name mine this big long name again, just to make sure I have things organized, and I'll click Save. That gives us our generated webhook. Let's click OK. And right away, come down to save the scenario, and we can continue on. If you haven't used Make before, you can click around, drag this around, zoom in and out to build out this workspace. I'm going to click the plus to create a new module. First module is going to be a router, and I'll right click on one of these routers that pops up and delete the module. I'll right click on this router, rename it, reroute for testing, just setting things up, setting ourselves up for success. If we need to test out specific chains, we'll have this one set up. Now this next module will also be a router. Let's click the big plus to create a router here. I'm clicking on this button in this top corner to create a router. The router is also in the flow control right here. The router is also in the flow control right here. You can also type in router and find it in the flow control. So lots of ways to get to these built-in flow control operations. I'm just going to click the button in the corner here for router. That creates another router. And just to stay ultra organized, I'll right click on this router, rename it main route. Click OK. Now we've got our routing going on. For now, I'll just delete this other module, right click on it, delete it. So maintaining our ultra organization naming conventions here, I'll click this plus. We're going to add 2 more routers. I'll delete this one, click the big plus, add another router, and I'll delete this one. This router, I'll right click on it, rename it, generate story, click OK. And let's finally add in another module here. Click the big plus. This is going to be Airtable. We want to get a record. Click add to create a new connection. For the connection type, choose Airtable OAuth. For the connection name, you can name it whatever you want. I'll name mine Faceless Story Step-by-Step Demo and click Save. It's going to ask you to authorize and grant access to your Airtable base. Click Add a Base. Scroll down. Depending on how often you use Airtable, you'll have a number of bases in here. We want to find the one we've just been building out. And you can see why I name things the way that I do. It gets a little confusing. Here is the one I'm working on. Full step-by-step and grant access. Now we have access to our Airtable base. Let's go ahead and find that base from the dropdown. Click in there, choose the base, and we'll choose the table to start with. We're going to start with the stories table, and we need to get our record ID. So building out make automations, typically you're going to need to be pushing through data constantly, running the automation to get data down the chains and have that data available in the modules to actually input information and set up the modules. So we're going to have to do that to get the record ID, which means we're going to have to build our next Airtable automation back in Airtable. For now, I'll type in here some default numbers for the record ID and click OK. Let's go ahead and finish out this chain before we jump back into Airtable so you can see what we've got going on so far. Whole lot of nothing until we get down to Airtable. This is just for setting things up for success later on. Let's click the plus to create a new module. This one is going to be ChatGPT. You can type in the search bar ChatGPT, find the OpenAI ChatGPT module to create a completion. We're going to have to create a new connection. So you click add and follow the online help to create your new connection. I also have all of these tutorials, these little supplementary tutorials in my school community for setting up connections like ChatGPT, Google Drive, Facebook, and Instagram. All of these little supplementary things that are a bit tedious to work on. You can find all of those tutorials step by step in my school community. If you want to head over there, I have the link in the description to my school community. You can check it out and get your OpenAI connection set up. For now, I'll just choose a connection that I've already created. This is my master OpenAI connection. Once you have your connection set up, you can follow along with the rest of this setup here. So I'm going to choose the model. We'll choose the 4.0 mini. For max completion tokens, you can leave as is or just delete it out and leave it empty. Okay, so we're going to add some messages and take on some different roles. Let's click add message. The first role will be the role of the developer or the system. For the text context, we're going to create some links. Handy enough, we've created a system bot to input into this content field. So I'm going to choose the system bot instructions here. We actually need to drop down this little arrow and choose the system instructions inside of this array right there. And we're also going to add the prohibited language. Drop down this little arrow and choose the prohibited language. So now we have our system instructions and our prohibited language list as this system message. Let's add a new message. Click that button. For the role, we'll choose the user. For the text content, click in there and we'll choose the input story source here. Select that. Scroll down, click add message. We'll take on the role of the assistant for this message. Click in text content. And for the assistant, we need to drop down the story writer instructions and choose that instruction inside of the array. That will finish up the ChatGPT module. Let's click OK. Now, if you get this little red bubble, you can click into that. It says value must not be empty. Click cancel, click back into the module and click OK. That'll clear out that small little glitch there. All right, let's move on to the next one. I'm going to click the plus to create a new module. This will be Airtable. We want to update a record. Let's choose an account. We're going to choose the same connection we just created. So mine is the faceless story step by step. There it is. We need to update our permissions with Airtable and make, so click continue. It'll ask you to grant access. We can add a base, find your base. There it is. Click grant access. Let's choose the base, choose the table. We'll choose the stories table. Okay, and we want to update this record ID. We don't have this record ID yet. We'll need to push some data through. So I'm going to put that default record ID in there like that. And we actually need to add another field to Airtable, one that I forgot, which is common when you're building this stuff out. You just build as you go. So we're going to head back into Airtable, set up that new field and run the data through with an automation to finish off this chain here. So for now, I'll leave this record as is. I'll click OK. Let's add another module to this ChatGPT module here. I'll right click on it, choose add error handler, select break. We'll say number of attempts 3 and we'll set the interval between attempts equal to 1. Again, we have this little bubble. Let's see what we need. Click on this text and choose allow storing of incomplete executions. Yes. Click OK. Click the auto align button, save your scenario, and let's jump back into Airtable and get some data pushed down this chain. So I'm going to jump back into Airtable. I'm going to come into my stories table and just clean up my main view for all stories. And let's take a look at some of this stuff. I have the aspect ratio and the flux realism image fields here. We don't actually need to see these. I'm going to click on these two fields and hide them. And now I want to show some fields that we do need. I'm going to hide the record ID field as well. Right click on it, hide that field. Now, anytime you need to show fields that you've already hidden, we can come up to this button, see all of our hidden fields. So you can follow along with me and show some of these fields that we need, that we created in the all data view and do not have visible in the all stories view. So we'll cruise down this list. Let's show the choose writer prompt preset. We want choose image style. And now we need to create two new fields inside of this table. So let's do that. What I'm going to do first is rearrange these fields a little bit. We want to have this in a logical order for our content creation process. So I'm going to slide down the choose writer field, the choose image style, and the prompt preset. So now as we're working on a new story, we can input the name, choose the orientation, the writer, the image style, then input the source and continue the creation process in a logical flow here. Just for organization purposes, again, you can rearrange this however you want. So let's click the plus to create a new field. This will be a checkbox. Let's call it start or go, whatever you want. I'll choose the style. I like this little thumbs up. Create the field. Just resize that field a little bit. Let's click the plus to create a new field. This one we'll call story output. So it'll be a long text. Let's create the field. Okay, and the next field we need to create is actually a lookup table for a field we already have linked. So I'm going to jump into all data. I'm going to find the assembly linked field. Here it is. And I'm going to add a lookup field for this table. I'll right click on it, click add lookup fields, and I want to look up the finished video. We want to get that into the stories table, just so we could have a nice finished look to our stories table. So I'm going to add that, click add one field. I'll jump back into all stories. And now I want to show that new field, come into the hidden fields and toggle on finished video from assembly. There it is. I'll double click on it and rename it to simply finished video. click save. There we go. So we needed this field to actually run our automations. This will be our button to kick off the entire thing. So that was important. And we need this as a storage field. We can see the output of our input story and the output of our ChatGPT writers. So we'll have this story output field. Then of course, when everything's all finished, we got this nice finished video field. So we're going to hook up this field as a button to run our automation and kick off our make scenario. Let's dive into that. So let's jump over to the automations tab. We're going to come down here, click the plus to create a new automation. Let's name this automation generate story. Click add a trigger when record matches conditions. Select the table, stories table. Let's add a condition. When start is checked, we'll kick off this automation and run these actions. We can put some more conditions here to make sure we are ready to run, just to make sure we're not accidentally running the automation and burning through credits with no information in there. Things like that. We can add another condition. When start is checked and choose writer. Select this drop down is not empty. So we have a writer selected. Add a condition and auto settings. Select this drop down is not empty. So we've set our automatic settings. Click add a condition and let's select this one. Video orientation is not empty. That's required for the flex image generation to have that variable in there. So we need that to be not empty. Let's add some more conditions and scroll down. We'll choose system instructions. Select this drop down is not empty. So we can just use this one, signifying we have system instructions ready to go. Our first new entry to stories automation has run and our system instructions are input, then we can actually run this automation. So when all of these conditions are true, this automation will trigger. So let's click to add an action. We're going to run a script. So for the script, the way that I discovered all these scripts to write all these scripts is just having a conversation with ChatGPT and say, hey, can you write a script that does this for Airtable inside of the run a script action? That's really all it takes. But for now, you can copy and paste the script I put in here. There it is. Take a screenshot, throw that into ChatGPT and get that pasted in there just like that. Now we need to add some input variables. These three squiggly lines are showing that we don't have these variables set up. Come over here, click add input variable. For the first one, we're going to use this name. So you can copy this first squiggly underlined name webhook, copy it, paste it right there. For the next one, same thing, copy that record ID. Let's click add input variable, paste that record ID. Last one, action, copy that word, click add input variable and paste that action name right there. Now for the record ID, we can get this one, click the plus and select Airtable record ID. For the action, we're going to name this one ourselves. Let's name it generate story. And the way that I've named this is just typical naming conventions for basic coding. You can name it something that you can remember, but you have to maintain capitalization and copy this value exactly as you've named it here. Otherwise, it will not work. So I'm going to name this one like that. Typical coding naming conventions. And for the webhook value, we actually need to get from the Airtable module in make. So real quick, let's jump over to make. Come into our first Airtable module. I'll copy this address to clipboard, can cancel or click OK. Jump back into Airtable and paste that webhook right there. Your webhook is going to be different from my webhook. They're automatically generated. Now we can come up and finish editing. That is our script that is finished. Let's take a look at what's going on over here on the right side. We can see our variables that we added, the webhook with the actual value, the record ID with that value, and the action with that value. Let's come up here to flip on the automation and let's go ahead and trigger this automation. Jump back into make. Let's come down here to run once. Now we can see that webhook is waiting for our signal. Jump back into Airtable. I'll come into the data. Now we can set up one of these records to trigger and actually get some data moving through the make scenario. So what I'm going to do is delete out these 4 records that we were playing with, select the checkbox, right click on any of them and say delete all selected stories. Now we have this one we can test with. So I'll name this story test. I'll set the video orientation. Remember our parameters are conditions that we set in that automation. We need an orientation set. We need a writer set. So I'll choose my news reporter writer. Just for fun, I'll set everything here. I'll choose my image style and we need an input story source. I don't think we actually set that up as a condition. We probably should. We need some kind of input story or some kind of story prompt. So I'm going to click in here and actually fix my typo. First of all, fix my typo, click save. And I want to make sure this is set up as a condition. Let's come back into automations, make sure we're selected our generate story automation. Let's click on the trigger here. And we need to make sure that we have some input. Let's click add condition. We need input story source here. Click the drop down is not empty. So we have some kind of source, whether it's an actual story or just a text prompt to write a story. We need some kind of input for this to actually trigger and work. So let's click update, come back into the data. So for the input story source, we can input anything. Story about a mysterious figure. The other condition is requiring the full auto be set. And the last condition is that we check this box. Let's go ahead and check it. Run some data down our make scenario. I'll check the box, jump back into make, and we can watch this run through our chain. Now my scenario is stuck on run. That means we have a condition that is not filled out. I've intentionally left this one so we can practice troubleshooting. We're going to have to do more troubleshooting through this automation build, but let's take a look at what's going on. We're going to jump back into Airtable. Everything looks like it's filled out. We can double check our conditions for triggering this automation in the automations tab, in the generate story automation, in the trigger action. And what have we set here? System instructions must not be empty. That is the one that's holding us up. Let's go back into the data. Let's go into all data and find our system instructions is in fact empty. We had created this record, or I should say this record was created by default when we created this table, and this record did not automatically get our system instructions added in here. We have to manually add in our system instructions and our JSON instructions and all of that good stuff. Alternatively, we have the automation already up and running to do that for us. So I can click the plus to create a new record. And now we can see all of these instructions automatically pop up. Let's jump back into our all stories view, and I can just copy this information straight down into my new record here. I'll click on the first record and just pull down this little tab, copy all the information. And now when we hit start, this one will run through. Just a quick little lesson on troubleshooting. I'll click start, jump into make, and now we can watch this one run through. I also wanted to illustrate the importance of setting those conditions. If we hadn't set those conditions the way they were, the scenario would have run without our system instructions in there, and we would have gotten a failure in the automation. But because we're setting ourselves up for success, putting in the correct conditions, putting in the correct naming conventions, we should have an easier time with the overall build. And that goes true for anything you're building, anything you're creating from scratch. That is going to hold up if you start off the right way. I can't stress that enough, but I don't do it myself. Let's take a look at what happened. We had our data run through. We hit this first Airtable module and we've got a warning. We've got this failure, and I know exactly what that is. We don't have our record ID in there yet. We needed to push that data through. That was the whole point of running this scenario as we did. Let's input our data. We're going to click on this first module, delete out our default record ID, and now we can actually add in our true record ID right here. Click OK. Same thing over here in this module now. We have that data moving through. Let's go ahead and add that record ID right here. Delete out our temporary data and add our true record ID right there. We can also finish off this module with the rest of the information we need. We went in and we added a new field called story output. This is what we need. Let's click into there and we'll add the result from our ChatGPT module. Click OK. Now, just speaking of naming conventions, let's right click on this module. We'll rename it Story Writer. This is our actual assistant story writer doing the work here, so we can name it Story Writer. Let's save the scenario, and this first chain is completely finished, guys. Congratulations. We've got a lot more to do, but you're on your way. Let's move on to the next chain in this make scenario. All right, we're going to slide back down to this router. Click on the router to create a new module here. Click on the big plus to add in that module, and we're going to use this built-in tools module. You can type in tools in the search bar, that'll pop it up. What we actually need in this tools module is the sleep module to add a delay. We're just going to put a short 5-second delay on this operation just to make sure the story writer has finished writing and the Airtable base is updated before this chain is executed. To organize your modules quickly, you can come down, click the auto align button. I'll click the plus to add a new module. This is going to be Airtable. We're going to get a record. We have to choose the same connection we had before. Got to find my lengthy connection name. There it is. I'll choose the base, choose the table, stories table, record ID. We're going to get that record ID right there. Click OK. The next module, click the plus. It's going to be ChatGPT. To create a completion, you're going to choose your same connection as before. I'll click in here, choose my connection. We'll choose the model, GPT-4o Mini. Now, as a side note, we're using the Mini because anything else is really overkill. We don't need to use our credits on so much computation and so much reasoning power. We're simply writing basic stuff. So we're using the Mini. That's going to save you the most money and use the least amount of your credits. The max completion tokens, I'll leave that empty. Click add message. Role is the user. Click into the text content and you can copy what I have here. You can type it out or copy and paste it into ChatGPT and have ChatGPT type it out. Let's scroll down, click add message. This will be the role of the assistant. For the text content, we're going to say create a JSON, then click into here and input our JSON instructions. So we need our JSON bot instructions. There it is. Drop this down. Click on the one. We need the information that's inside of that array. Click on the little one right here. That should give you a space between these two brackets. That's what that visual should look like. Next, we're going to say one quote. This is where we'll add our prompt preset. Drop this down, add the prompt preset right there. End quote. Then we'll say two quote, and we'll add the story output right there, end quote. This will create a JSON object for us that will generate the voiceovers and the image prompts in the generation tab. So we actually need to show advanced settings down here. Click that button. Scroll down, the output format will be a JSON object, and we want to make sure that parse JSON response is no. Then click OK. We might get this little error bubble again. Click in there, say value must not be empty. Click cancel, click back into the module, click OK. That will clear out that small glitch, and I'm going to come down and save the scenario. Great, let's move on to the next module. I'll click the plus to create a new module. This will be a parse JSON module. Type in the search box JSON, find parse JSON. Don't need a data structure. We just need to add in the string which we're getting from ChatGPT. We're creating a JSON object. So we need the result from ChatGPT and click OK. Now, for the sake of our expert naming conventions, we're going to right click on this ChatGPT module, rename it, write voiceover and image prompts. While we're here, I'm going to right click on this module again, say add error handler, choose break. Number of attempts is 3 with the interval being 1. Click OK. I'll hit the auto align button. Let's click the plus on the JSON module to add a new module. This will be an iterator. You can find the iterator up here. We can find it in the flow control. We can find it in the flow control down here, and we can search for it in the search bar. I'm going to click this button right here for the iterator. For the array, we need to pass in the data, so we'll have to run the scenario one more time. For now, just click OK, and let's run the scenario. We'll come down here, click run once. This is giving you a small warning here, just say run anyway. Now we can come into Airtable and run the automation so we can trigger our test record one more time. Just to keep things organized, I'll delete out this first test record that is non-operational. I'll click on it, click the checkbox, right click and delete that story. Now we have our test record we can play with. To trigger the automation, I'll untoggle start, toggle it again, jump into make, and watch this run through. So we got an error on ChatGPT here. We'll have to check out what that is, but we're still pushing data down this chain. That is fine. There we go. Let's check out this error. Click on the little bubble, and it's saying we've got some invalid data. If I click in there, check out what we got. We are missing the input story source. Most likely it's a small connection issue. I'll delete that out and click on input story source here one more time. That'll reconnect it. Everything looks good. I'll click OK. Don't really need that to be functioning just yet. We're still just trying to push data down these chains and get everything moving. So we have the data now in the iterator. That is excellent. Let's go ahead and finish off this iterator so we can enter in the array. Click in there and click this array called prompts. Click OK. Click the plus to create a new module. This will be Airtable. We're going to update a record. Make sure the same connection is selected. We'll choose the base. There it is. Choose the table, the stories table. All right. right, let's move on to the next module. Click the plus to create a new module. This is going to be Airtable. Create a record. Make sure the same connection is selected here. Let's choose the base. There it is. Choose the table. We're going to create all of these records in the generation table. Select the generation table, and now we can input what we want to be generated. Let's select the voiceover. We have the voiceover from the flow control iterator. We need the image prompt. Click in here. We have the AI image prompts from the iterator, and we can scroll down and connect up our record ID from the stories. Let's add item to the stories. For the record ID, we'll select the record ID. Great, connected up. Let's click OK. Come down, save the scenario. That is it. One full chain of operations, one full action completed, guys. We're gonna move on to the next automation and the next chain of action here. All right, to set up the next chain, we're going to have to set a new automation in Airtable, and we're going to have to set some variables in the make scenario itself. So we have this router configuration going on here. We've got the reroute for testing, our main route, and our first action right here. That action is splitting off into two chains just like that. So we have our main route connected to our generate story. To generate the story, we're going to have to pass this filter in a specific way. Let's click on this wrench, click set up a filter, and we're going to set a condition where the action is equal to this variable right here is the only variable we have set for the action. We're going to set it to generate story. Now, if you want to make sure you're getting this variable exactly the way that you have it set up, again, it's very important. The capitalization, the spacing, all of this stuff is important for the naming. So we're going to come back into automations tab. We're going to come into our generate story action. We're going to come into the run a script action, and we'll find that action variable right here to generate story. Now just copy and paste that. That way it won't get messed up. Back into make, right there is where we will paste that variable. So when that action variable is equal to generate story, click OK, we will perform the generate story chains. Great. That allows us to create new chains with new variables to perform those actions. So what we're going to do off the main route is create a new route. I'll click the auto align button. There we go. And right away, we can set up a new filter for this action. We need to create a new automation to trigger this action. Let's jump into Airtable. We're going to set up a new automation just like this. So we'll come down, click the plus to create a new automation. We'll name this automation generate audio. Let's add a trigger when a record matches conditions. Select the table, the generation table, add an action. The action is run a script, and we can paste in the same exact script from your other action. Okay, I'm gonna go back. I'll hit finish editing. Let's go back into generate story, run a script action. Now we can scroll down here on the right side and click edit code. That'll bring up our script section again. I'll select everything here, copy it, click finish editing, come into the generate audio automation in the run a script action. I'll click edit code and paste the script in here. So I'll delete out this default, paste in the script. Now we're going to need to copy and paste these things again. Let's click add input variable, copy the webhook, copy the record ID, click add new input variable, paste that one in there, click add input variable, and copy the action. Now we've got our names. Let's add in the values for the action. We're going to type in our variable. Let's stick to our naming conventions and call this generate audio with capitalization and spacing just like that. For the record ID, we'll click the plus, choose Airtable record ID. For the value for the webhook, we can get that again from make. I'll jump into make, click on my webhook, copy the address to clipboard, hit cancel or OK, jump back into Airtable and paste that value right there. Great, that is it for the script. Let's click finish editing. Now you can see we didn't actually set our conditions for our trigger. Let's figure out what conditions we need to generate audio. So we'll come back into the trigger action and we'll add our first condition, but we'll need to set up some things a little bit differently for our particular settings, and the setting in particular is our auto settings. How much control do we want over our generation in the generation table? Do we want full control? Do we want to generate exactly what we want? Do we want the automation to generate for us? And so what we can do is actually tailor our automatic settings in this automation. So let's go back into the automations tab and we'll set up this automation for full manual control of our generation. So our conditions here, we'll set the first condition is when generation actions is generate audio. That will trigger the automation. We also want to make sure that our auto settings from stories has any of manual. We could also say is exactly manual, but I'll leave it as has any of. We can tailor this to our preferences. Let's add a condition and voiceover is not empty. There we go. That should do it for our conditions. We have our voiceover text. We're set to manual and we're manually selecting the generate audio action. Let's flip on this automation. Let's come into the run a script action and copy our variable right here. Copy that, come back into make, and now we can set up this filter with that variable. Click on the little wrench, set up a filter where the action is equal to generate audio. Click OK, and we are ready to run down this new chain. Let's jump into it. So following this naming and organization style here, we're going to create a router and label it. Click on the big plus, click on the router. I'll delete this module, keep this one open. I'll right click on this router and rename it. Generate audio, click OK. Click the plus for this next module. It's going to be Airtable. Get a record. Make sure you choose the same connection. I'll choose my same connection there. Choose the base. Choose the table. This is the generation table and the record ID is the record ID. Click OK. Click the plus to create a new module. This is going to be 11 labs. You can type in 11 labs, find the 11 labs module, and create a speech synthesis. For your 11 labs connection, I have the tutorial on setting up 11 labs, getting your API key, setting up your connection. If you want to jump over to my school community, that tutorial is in the classroom. You can check it out over there. Otherwise, you're going to click add, follow the online help to set up your 11 labs connection. I'll go ahead and set my 11 labs connection here. Once you have your connection set up, you can follow along with the rest of this module. For the voice, you can choose your voice model that you want. I'm going to choose my generated good male voice for the model. We can use the 11 multilingual V2. This one right here. For the text, we're going to input our voice over text right here. Select that. Then for the rest of the settings, I'll leave them blank and click OK. Great. Let's click the plus, create a new module. We're going to create a series of Google Drive modules. So I'll select Google Drive. You can type it in the search bar to find it. Google Drive, scroll down, upload a file. Now, the reason we're using Google Drive here is because 11 Labs doesn't actually provide a URL for the output of the synthesized voice. So we need to find a way to get a file URL. What we're doing is actually uploading a temporary file to Google Drive, grabbing the URL, then deleting that file out of Google Drive and inputting that file into our video, right? So kind of a workaround, but we're using Google Drive to get it done. Unfortunately, Google Drive is probably one of the most tedious connection setups you can do in Make. Definitely a trial to get that connection set up. Of course, I have the tutorial in my school community. If you want to jump over to school and check out the tutorial on setting up your Google Drive connection. Otherwise, if you want to figure it out on your own, you're going to click add and follow the online help right here. That's how I figured it out. I read the online help, worked through it, trial and error, got it done, and created my Google Drive connection. So I have my connection selected here. Once you have your connection, you can continue to follow along in this module. We're going to choose a folder to set that temporary file. Okay, so for the folder ID, we actually want to choose from the list, select from the list here. Now we can navigate to an actual folder in my Google Drive. So in my drive, let's take a look at my Google Drive. This is my actual Google Drive. So in my drive, I have a folder called automation dump. Inside of there, I have a file called temp files, and this is where a bunch of stuff gets dumped and deleted afterwards. So we'll jump back into Make. I'll navigate to that file in my drive, choose a folder, automation dump. Inside of automation dump, there is my temp files folder. We're going to use the 11 Labs file right here and click OK. We got these little error bubbles pop up again. You can click on that error bubble, says value must not be empty. Cancel that, click into the Google Drive module, click OK. That'll clear out that small little glitch and we can save the scenario. Now, while we're here, I'm going to right click on the 11 Labs module, click add error handler, choose break. We'll set the number of attempts to 5. We'll set the interval to 1 and click OK. I'll click the auto align button. Moving on from Google Drive, I'll click the plus to create a new module. This will be Google Drive. Scroll down and we'll get that share link. Get a share link. Okay, now we need to choose that file ID from Google Drive. Click in there, choose file ID, click OK. We'll say for the type, we'll choose this to anyone and click OK. Let's click the plus to create a new module. This will be Google Drive one more time. We're going to delete a file. So find the module to move file or folder to the trash or delete a file or folder. Either one you choose, I'll go ahead and delete a file or folder. For the file ID here, we'll choose the file ID and click OK. Let's click the plus to create a new module. This is Airtable, update a record. Make sure the same connection is selected. We'll choose the base, choose the table, the generation table. For the record ID, click in there, scroll down all the way to the bottom. We're going to find the record ID. Now we need to input the audio. Click add item. The file URL is from Google Drive. From the get a share link module, we need the web content link and click OK. I'll click the auto align button. I'll click save. And guys, we have just set up the second automation chain of this scenario. Congratulations. We are cruising through this. Let's continue on. Let's keep at it. Great. So we've set up our second automation chain here to generate audio. We can only at this point generate audio manually. We'd have to set up that second automation in Airtable. Let's jump over to Airtable. We've got our generate audio automation here. I'm going to click into that and rename it. You can click on the 3 little dots here to rename it or double click on the name up here to rename it. And I'll rename it manual generate audio so we can manually trigger that run. Let's build out the automation to automatically trigger that run. What I'm going to do first is right click on this automation and duplicate it. Now we have the manual generate audio copy. I'll rename it auto generate audio. And while I'm here, I'll go ahead and flip it on. Now we need to completely redesign the trigger and the action to run the script. So let's change the trigger to trigger type when a record is created. Click change trigger, select the table, generation table. We'll just hit update to save it. We need to add some advanced logic here. So I'm going to click this button and say conditional logic. Click on that. Now we can add our conditions inside of this logic box right here. So the conditions we want are basically the same as manual, but we're going to change up a few things. We can edit our conditions. For the first one, we'll say run actions in this group if, click the plus, scroll down to voiceover, click the drop down is not empty. Let's add a condition and click the plus, audio, click on audio, scroll down, click URL, click the drop down. We want to make sure we're not repetitively generating audio. So only when audio is not there will we generate more audio. And the last condition, click the plus, click auto settings, click value, has any of, click this drop down, semi-auto or full auto. That way, when we are set to full auto, this will trigger. And when we're set to semi-auto, this will trigger. You can tailor the behavior to your own preferences, but when I'm set to semi-auto, I like the audio to automatically generate and then the video to give me manual control. So that is my thinking on the semi-auto process. You can tailor this to exactly what you want. I'm going to set mine to those right there. Great. We can click update to save it. Now we want to add the script inside of this logic box. I'm just going to grab these 6 little dots right here. You can grab this to move around in action. I'll go ahead and drag this action down into that logic box. So now when our conditions are met, we'll run this script. Click update and we've got our automatic audio generation action set up. Let's just double check on this script action. Click on that. We have our action set to generate audio. That looks good. Next automation we need to build is for image generation. So let's create that one. I'll actually right click on this manual generate audio automation, click duplicate. I'll come up here to rename it, call it manual generate image. And while we're here, we can toggle it on. Let's come into the trigger action. I'll change some of these conditions. When generation action is generate image and when AI image prompt is not empty, click update to save it. Let's jump into the run a script action, come down to the action variable, and we'll change this variable to generate image. Again, be careful with your variables. They have to be named exactly in all places. So I'll come up, hit update to save that one more time. Great, let's jump into make. So we can create our next chain off the main route here to generate image. I'll click on the main route. That'll create another module. I'll click on the big plus to add a module. I'll add a router. I'll grab one of these modules and delete it. Come down to the auto align button, hit that, and right click on this router to rename it, generate image. Click OK. Click the plus to create a new module. This will be Airtable get a record. Let's choose our same connection. Grab that same connection. Let's choose the base. Choose the table. Table will be the generation table, and the record ID will be record ID. Click OK. Awesome. Let's click the plus to create a new module. This will be an HTTP module. So we're going to set up a custom HTTP module to make a request. Scroll down, choose make a request. This will call the API that we're using. If you don't know anything about APIs, and setting up your custom HTTP modules for those APIs, it's basically a lot of reading through documentation for the API, finding the URLs, finding all of the headers, body types, all of this stuff, and entering it in here correctly. We don't need to worry about that. Just copy and paste what I have here. For the URL, copy this URL. For the method, choose post, and for the headers, you're going to have to create an API key with fal.ai. So let's pause on this. I'll come down, click OK, come down here to save the scenario, and we'll jump over to fal.ai. So this is an incredible API. We can choose a ton of different models to work with. You're going to create an account with AI and then throw in a couple credits that we can use to generate your images. All of these models, we can use Flux, we can use Luma, we can use Kling, we can use a ton of different models, and there are many more than are listed here. These are just the models I'm actually running. Each of these models is a pay-as-you-go setup, so you won't have to subscribe. You can just throw in your credits and pay as you go. The model we're using for this build is the Flux Realism model, and you can check out all the documentation for the model here. What we need to do is create an API key. I'll come up here to the API keys section, click add a key, name your key. I'll name mine demo key. You can name it whatever you want, and create key. I'm going to delete this particular key right after this video, but this is your API key. You want to keep it safe. You want to write it down. They're only going to show it to you once, so make sure you copy it, write it down, and keep it safe. I'll copy the key, then click done. And now I have my demo key right here. I'm going to jump back into make, come into the HTTP module. We need to add a header, click that button, and in this value field, paste that API key. All right, now you can copy and follow along with what I have here. In this name field, type in authorization, and in the value before the API key, you're going to type in capital KEY space and then your API key. Okay, let's scroll down. For the body type, choose raw. For the content type, choose JSON application JSON. And for the request content, you can copy what I have. Again, these settings are for the API itself, and these in particular are the settings we need for Flux. So don't worry about it too much. If it doesn't make sense, this would only be a matter of reading through the documentation on fal.ai for the model you want to use and finding these particular settings for whatever model. Let's not worry about that too much. Just paste this in here. Now we need to input these two settings here. So for the prompt in between the quotation marks, we're going to add the AI image prompt. And for the image size in between the quotation marks, we're going to add the Flux Realism image size, but we need to drop down this little arrow and choose that number 1. Then click OK. That one is set up. Let's move on to the next one. Click the plus to create a new module. This is going to be a tools module. You can type in tools. We're going to add a sleep module for a delay. We might need to tinker with this delay. For now, we can set it to 20 seconds. We're just waiting for Flux to generate that image. Let's click OK. That delay will give Flux 20 seconds to create the image before we try and download it. All right, so we'll have to run the scenario to get some data down here to continue on pushing data and set up the next module. So we can set this up to run the scenario. What we need to add in here is the filter for this route. So I'm going to click on the little wrench right here, set up a filter, set the condition to where the action is equal to. Let's grab that action variable one more time. I'll jump into Airtable. I'll come into my manual generate image, run a script action, and copy that variable right there. Come back into make and paste that variable just like that. Click OK. Now we can run this scenario to push data through. I'll come down and click save and click run once. Now it's going to sit here waiting for us to send some signals through. So let's jump back into Airtable. I'll come into the data, come into the generation table. Again, we're trying to push some data through the image generation. So we're going to fake an image generation request right now. While we're here, let's go ahead and clean up the generation table a little bit. We have our voiceover section. We have our AI image prompt section. We'll get our images back right here. We got our generation actions. I'm just resizing these fields a little bit. We'll get our video back right here. We'll get our audio back right here. I'm actually going to switch some of these around and say generation actions here, image, then audio, then video, then audio and video. Just a preference, again, organization. I'll resize some of these fields and I will right click on the created field to hide it. And the request ID is simply for reference. We can right click on that and hide that as well. Same with the record ID. Let's hide that. Cool. So our generation table is looking smooth. Let's create an image generation here. So I'm going to type in the story name, test. For the image prompt, I'll type in anything to send to Flux, a mysterious figure. That works. Okay, but before we trigger this automation to run, there's one more condition we set, and it is one more field that we're missing from the generation view here. So we need to go into the hidden fields and show our auto settings drop down. I'm going to select this field and drag it over here. Just before generation actions, we need to have our auto settings set. I'll rename this field by double clicking on it and simply name it auto settings. Click save. So to trigger this manually, we need our auto settings set to manual. But as it is, this is a calculated field and it will not let us change this setting in the generation table. So for now, let's go back into the automations, find our generate image automation. And while we're here, I'll just grab these 6 little dots and drag it down for organization. I'll click on our trigger action and I'll remove this condition. Click update to save it, come back into the data. Now our auto settings don't matter and we can manually trigger our generation actions. But before we do that, there is one thing we forgot in one of the modules. Real quick, let's jump back into make. We can stop this from running. Click stop. Click force stop, come into the HTTP module here, scroll down, and we want to make sure that parse response is toggled on yes. Click OK, save it one more time, come down here to run once, jump back into Airtable and let's generate that image. Watch it run down. There it goes. We made that call to FAL and now that sleep timer is activated. Great. Now that the data is coming through, let's click the plus to create a new module. This will be HTTP. Make a request. For the URL, we can grab this URL from the previous HTTP module. This will be the response URL. For the method, we'll leave as get. For the headers, we'll copy directly from the other HTTP module. I'll come into this one, copy authorization, paste it into the name, come back and copy and paste the API key just like that. For the body, same thing. We'll choose raw content type, JSON application JSON. And for this one, we don't need anything else. We can click OK. Let's come back to this first HTTP module, right click on it and rename it. Rename it fal.ai. Click OK. We'll right click on this one, rename it download image. Click OK. Click the plus to create a new module. This will be JSON module to parse JSON. In the JSON string, we'll select data. Click OK. Click the plus, create a new module. This will be Airtable. Update a record. Check the connection. Choose the base. Choose the table. This is the generation table. Record ID is this record ID right here. Now we can update the image. Click add item. File URL. We can't add yet. We need to push that data farther down and actually download that image from FAL. So we can skip that for now. Come down to request ID and we can enter in the request ID right here. This one is purely for reference. We can add that in there and see it in Airtable. Click OK. We have to run it one more time to push that data through. So let's go ahead, save the scenario, come down, run once. Let's jump into Airtable. We can delete this out of the generation actions, click back into it and reselect it. Come back into make, watch this run down. There it goes. We're waiting that 20 seconds while that image is being generated. Now, if you want to check your FAL account, you can come into FAL, go to your home page, check your model requests and see the requests you're making. Here is the mysterious figure that I'm generating. If the status code is not 200 right here, FAL has had an error and we'll have to troubleshoot at that point. But you can check your FAL status with Flux in your account right here. So that one looks like it came through into FAL just fine. Let's jump back into make. We can see that came all the way through. So we can update that record in Airtable. We'll click on the Airtable module, and for the file URL, we could enter in, let's drop down the images and choose URL from the JSON module. Click OK. Now we have that data all the way through, and this automation chain is done. Congratulations. We are so close. Let's keep going. Create the next chain here. Okay, so the next automation chain is to generate video. Let's click on the main route to create a new route. We'll click on this module, add a router. That'll create 2 default modules. I'll click on one of them, right click on it and delete it. I'll click the auto align button. I'll right click on this router and rename it generate video and click OK. Let's go ahead and get as far as we can down this chain before we get into Airtable and create that trigger automation. So let's go ahead and add the next module. We'll click the plus. This will be Airtable. Get a record, select your connection, choose your base, choose the table, generation table, and choose the record ID. Click OK. Click the plus to create a new module. This will be an iterator. For the array, we'll choose this image array, click OK. Click the plus to create a new module. This will be a JSON module, create a JSON. Now we're going to input a data structure here, and this gets very complicated at creating data structures. So I have this data structure saved as a JSON object. I have the link in my school community if you want to jump in there and grab the data structure. Otherwise, you'll have to create it on your own here. You can also check the links in the description of the video. So what we need to do, we got to jump over to my document with the JSON text. So let's first create these data structures. I'm going to click add to create a new data structure. I'll name the structure following my document. So I'll pop over to my JSONs document. Let's grab this first one, animation settings. I'll copy that, come back into make and paste that as the title, as the data structure name. Then I'll click this button to generate. It's going to ask for some sample data. Let's jump back into my document. And for the animation settings, we're going to copy this entire string right here. Copy that, jump back into make and paste that in the sample data, then click generate. Right away, come down, click save, and we have that data structure added in. If you click add item, we can see all of the input fields have been generated correctly. So follow along. We'll just fill these out one by one. For the source, click into there. This is going to be the URL from the flow control. For the type in image. For the zoom, we'll put 4. For the width and height, we can hard code some settings in here, but to make it as dynamic as we already have set up, we need to actually add some new fields in Airtable. So we can jump over there and finish that off. Let's go ahead and just hit OK. We'll stick with this for now. Jump back into Airtable and we'll add some back-end width and height settings for the output video for JSON to video. So let's come up into the stories table. Click on that. In here, let's go into the all data so we can see where we want to insert this information. I'd say right in here after video orientation, I'll right click on video orientation, click insert right. We'll name this width. This will be a formula field. For the formula, you can copy and paste what I have here. Very similar to our other calculation fields, relying on video orientation. Paste that in and create the field. We can duplicate this one, right click on it, say duplicate field, double click on it, rename it to height, and simply switch these numbers around like so, or you can copy and paste that right there. Click save. Now we have our width and height settings based on the video orientation. If I were to just create a quick record here and change the orientation to landscape just to see this pop up, everything pops up in order. We'll try one more for the square. That looks good as well. So I'll delete out these 2 records I just created. Now we need to get these into the generation table. So we'll click on the generation table over here. We're going to add these as lookup fields to the stories linked field. I'll come into the all data. Let's find the stories linked field. Here it is. Right click on that. Click add lookup field. Now we can add those 2 new fields. We'll scroll all the way down to the bottom, add the width and height. Click add 2 fields. Now we've got width and height from stories. I'll click on both of those and just slide them into place just for organizational purposes, width and height. Great, let's jump back into make. Now we can input that width and height from make into the JSON object here. So click back into this JSON module for the width. We need to get that width into this list right here. So we actually need to rerun this get a record or refresh this get a record module. This is pretty common practice to refresh data coming through on a single module. We don't need to push data all the way through. We just need to update the Airtable module. Since we added new stuff to Airtable, the module itself isn't reflecting that new data. I'll right click on this module, click run only. Now we can input a record ID that has those elements in it. Let's go create that. We'll jump back into Airtable. In all data in the generation table, I'll find the stories field. I will link our test story to that field, and we can see now we have the settings pop up from our story in the stories table. Let's grab the record ID, not this record ID from stories, but the record ID from this generation table record. There it is. I'll copy that. Again, why I like to put record IDs at the end. We can always find it if we need it. Come back into make, paste the record ID right there and run that module by itself. That'll simply run through, say, hey, we got everything. Now we can come back into this module and input the new width and height settings right here. Let's go ahead, drop down the width, input that, click on height, drop that one down, click on that. Now for duration, we're gonna say 10, and position, you can type in center-center. You can play with this duration a little bit. You can tweak these numbers if you need to. We'll click OK to finish off this JSON module. Let's right click on it, click rename, and we'll name it the same thing as in our JSONs doc over here. I'll just copy this again, make it easy, paste it right there, and click OK. That's our animation settings. That was a lot of work. Let's just save the scenario. Transformer should not be the last. Save anyway. Click the plus to create a new module. This will be a JSON module, parse JSON, and we just add the JSON string from the previous module. Then click OK. Click the plus, create a new module. This will be an aggregator. We're going to collect all of that data, slam it back together. So the source module will be the iterator. Choose the iterator. Now to get the data that we need, we're going to have to push it, run the scenario, and push the data into the aggregator so that we can collect it all. I'm going to hit OK, save the scenario. Transformer should not be the last. Save anyway. Come down, click run once, run anyway. And now we can push some data down and see what happens here. Before we run that, it looks like we haven't set up our filter, because we haven't actually set up the automation in Airtable yet. So let's actually just stop this, jump into Airtable, quickly set up that new automation, come into the automations tab, and we want to generate video. Click on the manual generate image, duplicate the automation. We'll come up here to rename it, manual generate video. We'll flip it on, come into the trigger conditions. When generation actions is generate video and image is not empty, we have an image to work with. We can update that to save it. Come into the script action and we'll change the action variable to generate video. Click update. Let's copy that variable right here. Come into make. Now we'll paste that variable into the filter. Click on the little wrench on the route. Set up a filter condition where the action is equal to generate video. Click OK. And now we can manually trigger this chain. Let's go ahead and run once, run anyway, jump into Airtable, come into the data in the generation tab. We can come back to our generation view. Now the video settings are going to require some of those settings from the stories table. So let's actually push over our test record. If we come back into all data, we can see we have our test story already set up for us. That is the one that automatically generated these settings right here. Come back into generation. That's going to be this record right here. Okay, something I like to do to get all of these records organized and grouped nicely. We'll come up to group and we'll group by stories. Now we can see our stories right here, our empty test story that we're messing around with, and our actual test story from the stories table right here. So let's copy and paste these prompts. Mysterious figure, copy, I'll paste it down here. We've got the full auto settings on. If we double check all data, we can see all of our settings are set. The portrait orientation, the width, the height, aspect ratio, our variable for flux, all of those settings are correctly set. Let's jump back into the generation view and generate image. This will actually generate our first image from Flux and insert it into our workflow here. There is our first image into Airtable back from Flux. We could take a look. Pretty mysterious. Now we can generate our video, start pushing that data through. Just to clear things up, make it less confusing, I'm going to delete out our other test records over here, select both of those boxes, right click and delete those records. Now the only one we're testing is our actual story that we started over here. We can see in our generation table, we've got those records linked up. Great, so we can hit the next action here. Let's jump back into Make. And in Make, we're gonna go ahead and just flip on the entire scenario, flip it on so that it's active and running and waiting for input from us at any time. Toggle on this switch right here. Click OK, and we can come down, run once, run anyway, back into Airtable and hit generate video. Come back into Make so we can watch this one run through our new chain and push that data through those modules. There we go. We've got it through. So let's continue on for this array aggregator. Let's click into that. Now we have this option here to from the parse JSON module, we can aggregate all of the elements. We want to select that, click OK. Click the plus to create a new module. This will be a JSON module, create a JSON. We're going to create a new data structure here. Click add to create a new structure. Let's name the structure what we have from the Google Doc. I'll jump into the JSONs doc. This will be the image clip settings. I'll just copy this title, come back into Make, paste that as my data structure name, click generate. We need that sample data. Let's come back into the document. For the image clip settings, again, copy this entire JSON string, come back into Make and paste that string into the sample data, hit generate. Right away, click save. And now we have a new module here we can fill out. Let's go ahead and fill this one out. You can follow along with me. For the ID, we'll choose this ID. For the F, we'll just say 30 frames per second. For the cache, say no width. We'll use our width from stories, drop that down, select the width. Height from stories, drop that down, select the height. Again, we're selecting the drop down number 1 here. We need the information inside of the array right there. For scenes, we're going to map the scenes. Click this map button right here, click into the field and select the array. For the exports, we're going to drop this down, click add item. Destinations, add item. For the first item, the item type, can type in webhook. Now for the endpoint, we actually have to create a new automation in Airtable to get this webhook endpoint. So we'll come back to the endpoint in just a second. Let's skip down to the content type, type in application JSON, and scroll down. For the quality, you can type in high, and for the resolution, type in custom. All right, for the endpoint, let's jump back over to Airtable real quick to fix up another automation. I'll come into the automations tab, come down, click the plus to create a new automation. We'll call this clip back from JSON to video. Let's add a trigger when webhook received. Now we won't be able to finish this one off until we push some data through, but let's go ahead and click add action, update a record. This will be in the generation table. Record ID, we cannot fill out yet, so we'll leave that one unfinished. What we do need to grab is back in the trigger. For the example webhook, we can copy that webhook. Let's come back into Make and paste that webhook in the endpoint right here. Click OK. One more module. Let's click the plus to add a module. This one is going to be JSON to video. You can type in JSON to video, and we need to scroll down and find create a movie from JSON. Click on that. Now you'll need to set up your JSON to video connection right here. I have the tutorial on how to set up your connection. It's pretty straightforward. Getting your API key from your JSON to video account. You'll create your account, find your API key, then you can add a new connection and paste that API key in there. So for the movie JSON, we can add this JSON string and click OK. That will finish off this chain. That was a tough one. Great job getting these JSON modules filled out. Trust me, I had an incredible time trying to build those from scratch and then export that data. That was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, doing this stuff, figuring that out. But you don't have to. You can copy and paste what I got there. So that is it for this chain. If we jump back into Airtable real quick, we still have some things to tune up in here. We need to push some data through that chain. Let's go ahead and run that chain. I'll jump back into make, save the scenario, come down here to run once, jump into Airtable, come into the data, delete out this action and select that action again, come into make and watch that run down. There it goes. Now we've made that request to JSON to video. We've got the data coming through here. So if we pop back into Airtable, come into the automations, make sure we click on the JSON to video automation here. We can wait for that to come back from JSON to video. Test the trigger. We can see it has not come back yet. Now you can log into your JSON to video account. Here I am in my dashboard. If you come into the render logs, you can see the video that you have running. This is the latest one we just sent. So that one is running. Once that one finishes, JSON to video will send that webhook back to Airtable and that will complete that loop and get that video back for us. So you can sit in your render logs while you're building this out, hit refresh on your browser and wait for that video to say done. And there it is finished. Let's come back into Airtable. We can see this now has a green checkbox. The step was successful. We can finish off this update a record action. I'll click on that action. For the record ID, we're going to choose the webhook body, scroll down, choose the ID. For the field, choose a field, click into the body. We need the video URL right there. Select URL, and this automation is finished. We can now flip it on and get our videos back from JSON to video. Now, if we check the data, we will not see that video appear in our Airtable. When that actually run, the webhook wasn't set up and that couldn't update with our video. We just set up that automation. So we can run that automation manually, come into the automations. For the first time, we'll have to run it once manually to get that to come through, and that will trigger and run every time. So we can come down into the update record action in our clip back from JSON to video automation, click run as configured over here on the right, click run test. That will run the automation and update that record with the video. We can see the changes that have been made. We now have that video pop up. Let's come back into the data, and there's our brand new video in our generation table. Looks great. Guys, congratulations. That is creating a video with automation. We've got lots more to do. Let's keep at it. Before we go too much further down the chains in make, let's finish up the other two automations. Come into the automations tab. We have the manual operations. We can create the automatic operations. So I'm going to right click on auto generate audio, duplicate that automation, come up here to rename it auto generate image. I'll flip it on. Now we can change these conditions here. I'll click into the conditions. We can edit the conditions right here. So I will edit the first one, drop that down, click edit token, and we want to say AI image prompt is not empty. Drop this one down, edit the token. Let's go back, choose the data. We'll choose the image. URL is empty, and auto settings has any of these values. Let's click update to save it. We'll come into the run a script action, and we need to change the action variable right here. I'll come into manual generate image, come into the run a script action, copy the action variable, come into auto generate image, the action, and paste that action variable. Click update to save the changes. Now we have our automatic image generation. Let's go ahead and create our automatic video generation automation. This one's going to be a little bit different, so we're just going to duplicate our manual generate video automation. I'll come up here to rename it auto generate video. I'll flip it on. Now I'll change the trigger. Click on the trigger action. We'll change the conditions simply to when auto settings is full auto. What that means is if the settings are set to semi-auto or manual, the videos will not automatically generate. Let's click update. Great. We are moving through this, so we can jump into the next automation chain. Let's go ahead and create that automation while we're here. For this one, let's duplicate the auto generate video automation. I'll right click on that, click duplicate. We'll set the triggers here, but first let's come up and rename it auto merge audio plus video. Let's toggle it on, change the trigger change the conditions when auto settings has any of full auto and semi-auto. Audio is not empty. Let's add a condition. And video, click the drop down, is not empty. So now automatically when there is an audio and video file, they will get automatically merged. Let's update to save the changes, come into run a script action, and we'll change the action variable to merge audio video. Click update to save the changes. Let's go ahead and duplicate that. Now I'll just reorder this real quickly. I'll grab these 6 little dots and drag this one up above. Come up here to rename it manual merge audio plus video. Toggle it on. We'll change the trigger conditions when generation actions is merge audio plus video, and audio is not empty and video is not empty. Click update, save the changes, double check, run a script. We've got that variable in there. Great. So our next trigger chain is set up. Let's copy our action variable while we're here, jump into make, and we can create our next chain in this automation. I'm going to click on the main route to create a new module. I'll click on that module and create a router. I'll grab one of these blank modules, right click on it and delete it. I'll hit the auto align button, right click on this router and rename it merge audio plus video. Hit OK. Right away, let's come into our filter. We'll hit the wrench, set up a filter where the condition action is equal to merge audio video. Click OK. Now this one, we've been setting these up pretty quickly, but just to make it even faster, I'm going to right click on this and delete that module. I'll right click on this module and clone it, drag it down and stick it to our router right there. I'll click into it, double check our settings. We have the connection, the base, the table, and the record ID. Click OK. Let's click the plus to create a new module. This will be JSON create JSON. We're going to add a data structure for the name. I'll copy and paste that name from my document, come to my JSONs document, and we got that name right here, merge video settings. I'll copy that name, come into make, paste the name there, click generate, come back into the doc and copy this entire JSON string right here, come back into make and paste that into the sample data, click generate, right away, click save, and we've got our settings we can throw in here. So again, follow along. We'll go through all these settings. For the ID, we'll choose ID. For frames per second, we can say 30. For cache, say no. Width, we're going to take the width here, drop that down, grab that number from inside. For height, drop that down. We'll grab that number. For scenes, click add item. Elements, add item. For source, we're going to get our video, drop that down. URL. For type, you could type in video. For duration, enter -2. This will simply prioritize the length of the audio over the length of the video. Again, these are all JSON to video settings, and I built out all these data structures based on the JSON to video docs for all the JSON to video settings. A lot of work figuring that stuff out, but I had to do it, and we got these nice JSON objects to generate for you. Let's add an item. For item 2, the source will be our audio. Can drop that down and grab the URL. For the type, that's audio. For the duration, that's -1, simply saying use the full length of the audio. For exports, click add item. Destinations, for type, type in webhook. Again, for the endpoint, we'll have to create that automation for that endpoint webhook. For content type, we can skip over that for now and enter that in later. Content type, type in application JSON. For quality, type in high. And for resolution, type in custom. Okay, let's go make that endpoint. Let's jump into Airtable. I'm going to slide this automation up underneath the video section here. We're getting that clip back from our generate videos. So we're going to do the same thing, create another automation just like that. So I'll actually duplicate this one, right click on it, slide this one down, come up here to rename it. We'll name it merged clips back from JSON to video. Now we'll actually have to push data through to finish off this webhook. So let's click into the trigger. We can copy this sample webhook, copy that, jump back into make, paste it into the endpoint right there, and click OK. Let's click the plus to add a new module. This will be JSON to video. Scroll down, find create a movie from JSON. You're going to choose your same JSON to video connection, and for the movie JSON, we'll add the JSON string and click OK. Now let's push that data through. I'm going to save the scenario, come into Airtable, come into the data. Now to push that data through the audio video merge chain, we actually need to generate some audio. We never tested that automation, but we can now set that one up for testing. So I'm going to manually generate audio, but if you remember, we set up one of our conditions to require the manual auto setting. Let's go into the automations, come into the manual generate audio and remove that condition. That way we can still manually generate even with the auto settings set to full auto. Let's click update to save the changes. Let's jump into the data and type in a voiceover prompt. We can type in anything. A mysterious figure walks through the mist. I'm going to actually change some things around for that audio generation chain. So let's jump over there and we'll set this one up for testing and running through the merge audio video chain down here. Let's double check some of the settings in here. I just want to make sure my 11 Labs voice is set to multilingual V2. We'll set it to that setting. You can choose whatever voice you want, but for the model, let's choose this one right here. And to make things a little bit simpler, we can actually get rid of this middle Google Drive module. I'll just delete that module. And in the Airtable record, let's make sure we have these settings now set up correct. For the record ID, let's just double check we're using the record ID from this module. We'll scroll down and find that record ID from that module there. We can see that that's the right one because it starts to bounce and bobble. I'll choose that record ID, audio item file URL. We're going to use the web content link from the Google Drive, move a file or folder to the trash, or delete a file or folder module, whichever one you chose. I'm going to choose that web content link and click OK. I'll come down here, click the auto align button. That should clean things up and get this ready for testing. We skipped that testing phase when we built this one in. Let's give it a shot now. So we can jump back into Airtable, but first let's save the scenario. Come down here and run once, jump into Airtable. We have our prompt. So just to test the audio generation in full, click on the generate audio. All right, that one came all the way through, looks good, but we are not getting that audio back in Airtable. Let's take a look. I know exactly why that is. So I'm gonna jump into my Google Drive folder, and this is the folder that we're exposing to the automation. We just need to make sure that your folder is set to shared general access, anyone with the link, and we could leave this on viewer and click done. That'll solve that issue. I knew we were going to have to troubleshoot. Let's jump back into Airtable. We can set the generation actions to generate audio, and that'll pop that audio back in there. There it is. Excellent. Okay, so all we needed was to get that data to run through that last chain. Now, since we have our scenario running and we have our automatic settings set, as soon as the audio hits that field, that will run down this chain automatically. Now that the data has gone through our last chain, we could jump back into the Airtable automations, come down to the merge clips back from JSON to video, and we can see it has received that webhook. If we click on the trigger module here, we can see everything was successful. We can go ahead and flip on the automation and update that record. So we need to switch up the field in here, trash the video field, choose the field. We're going to update the audio plus video. Click the plus in the webhook. In the body, I'm going to scroll down and choose the URL. Let's update to save our progress. And now we can manually trigger this automation one time for the first time just to get that record to push through and kick off this automation for the first time. So I'm going to select run as configured in the update a record action. Click run test, and we'll see that audio plus video come through. There it is in our generation table. Excellent. Guys, we have finished the audio video merge chain. We got 2 more to go. We are almost there. Let's keep at it. I am ready to finish this one. What we're going to do is create the next chain. I'll come into Airtable, come into the automations, and let's go ahead and duplicate the manual merge audio plus video automation. I'll right click on that one, duplicate it, and slide it down to the bottom. Come up here to rename it. We're gonna name this one Combine All Clips. Go ahead, flip it on. Okay, now we're gonna change up the trigger action. The combining clips automation actually happens in the assembly table. So we're gonna switch up the table, choose the assembly table, delete out all of these conditions. We'll click add a condition. When audio video, click the drop down, is not empty, add a condition. when combine video is empty and a condition when assemble is checked. We can update that to save the changes, come into run a script and change our action variable to combine clips. I'll update one more time to save that. Let's copy our action variable, jump into make and create a new chain here. I'll click on the main router. I'll click on that module and create a router. And I'll go ahead and delete these two blank modules. I'll click on the auto align button and immediately come into the little wrench to set up a filter where the condition action is equal to combine clips. Paste that in there, click OK. Now I'm going to clone this module here and stick it down to our new router. Hit the auto align button one more time. Since this one is going to be in the assembly table, we need to get in here and switch up the table from generation to assembly. Click OK. Click the plus to create a new module. This will be the iterator. We're going to iterate through the audio video. Click on that. Click OK. Click the plus to create a new module. This will be JSON create JSON. We'll click add to create a new data structure and we'll copy and paste the name from my document. Head into the document. We are on the single clip settings. So let's grab that one right there. Come back into make, paste the name, click generate, come back into the document and we'll copy this JSON string right here. Paste that into the sample data, click generate right away, click save, and we've got our JSON object here. Before we go any farther and start confusing ourselves, let's name these JSON modules correctly. So I'll just hit OK. I'll right click on this module, rename it, come back into the doc. This is single clip settings. Copy that back into make, paste it here, click OK. And let's work our way back down through these. So heading back up, this one right here, I'll right click on it, click rename, come into the doc. This one is merge video settings. Come back into make, paste that one there for the name, click OK. Let's work our way back up. So we've got this one, right click on that, click rename, come into the doc. That one is image clip settings. Let's copy that, come into make, paste it right there and click OK. So now we have all of our create JSON modules named appropriately and we won't get confused because we will be adding a couple more. So we've got our single clip settings figured out. You can follow along and enter these in here with me. Click into the source. This will be the URL from the iterator. For the type in video. For zoom, 0. For width, we're going to find our width again, and we'll have to go through that connection process in the assembly table. So for now, we can just hit OK. Let's jump over to Airtable, come into the data, come into the assembly table. Okay, in the assembly table, we need to find our stories connected field. I'll right click on the field name right here, click add lookup fields, and we can look up those new width and height fields from the stories table. So I will toggle these on, click add to fields. Now we have our width and height settings in the assembly table. So let's jump back into make. We need to find those new settings in this module. So we'll have to refresh this module by running that module by itself. I'll right click on it, click run this module only, and we can input the record ID with that new information. So I'll jump back into Airtable. The record we have for that one is right here. Scroll down, grab the record ID, copy that, come back into make and paste it right there. Then click OK. That'll just run that module, refreshing that module. So we have all those fields refreshed and we can find them in this module. I'll click on it. So for the width, I'll drop this down, add the width. For height, drop down this arrow, add the height. For the duration setting, we'll set it to -1. That just means use the entire thing. We're not manually setting a duration, and position will be center. You can type that in, click OK. Let's move on, click the plus to create a new module. This is going to be JSON, parse JSON. For the JSON string, we can add the JSON string from the previous module. I'll click OK. Click the plus to create a new module. This will be an aggregator. You can find it here. For the source module, we'll use the iterator. Mine is number 54. You can name it if you have trouble finding it. We'll choose that source module iterator. Now we'll have to push data down this run to finish off this module. So I'll click OK. I'll right click on this router to rename it, combine all clips, click OK, and we can run this scenario to get that data down. I'll come down and save the scenario, save anyway, hit run once, run anyway, jump into Airtable. Now the way that we trigger this is by hitting the assemble button here. So we've got a bunch of records that have popped up in the assembly table that are blank. These were records that just came in here during our manipulation and the testing. So I'm just going to select all of these blank records, right click on one and delete them all. So we have our same testing story right here. This is the same story from the stories table, our test story with all of our settings. That is the same story that we've manually generated our media for in the generation tab. We got the image, audio, the video from that image, and the audio plus video merged video from the media. This merged video is what's popping up in our assembly table. There it is right there. So we can assemble and combine all of these clips. We only have one. We can combine all of these clips into a combined video. So we're gonna have to create one more clip and assemble it. For now, I'm in all data. Let's come into the assembly view right here, and we can clean up this view and organize it for what we need to see. So I'm going to hide this record ID field, hide the field. I'll come into the hidden fields. I'll show the audio plus video from generation from stories field, and I'll show the stories field. Now we can see our test story with the clips that we have, and we can finish off this video. I'm gonna double click the field name here for audio plus video and just rename it to audio plus video from generation. Now we have an at a glance view of all of the clips that we have generated in the generation tab. Let's go ahead and create another clip here to run that through. Still working in our test story here, I'll click the plus to create a new record, and we can manually input these prompts. We still have the auto settings set to full auto, but we can still manually generate if we need to. For the voiceover, let's just say the figure creeps through the dark woods. For the image prompt, we'll say a dark figure in the dark woods. Let's go ahead and start generating our media. So I'll choose from the generation actions, generate image. That one should run through. We can watch it run now. There it is. Jump back into Airtable. Let's select generate audio. That one should run through. And since our auto settings are set to full auto, we should have the video automatically being created. As soon as that image dropped in here, that automation should have run to create the video. So we can wait for that one to pop in. While we're waiting, we can change up the view a little bit. So I'm gonna come up to this button and set it to medium. That gives us a better view of our images, kind of blows up all of the records into a larger view just to see things a little bit better. I'll resize some of these fields, and that video has popped in here. The automation is still set to full auto. So once the audio and video arrives, it will automatically merge them into our combined audio and video. So there it is, nice and finished. Let's jump over to our assembly table, and we can see the two clips from generation table popped in here in our test story. Same thing as the other view. I want to see this a little bit better. I'll come up to this button, choose medium, just to see things a little more distinct. Now we can see our clips a little bit better, and we can run the automation to combine that into a single video. We have the checkbox right here to assemble. This should trigger the automation. I'm just going to jump into make and click run once so we can watch this one run through. Say run anyway, jump into Airtable and hit assemble. Let's come back into make so we can watch this data come through. There it is, and we should have it in our aggregator. However, it looks like it didn't actually run through these two modules. Let's take a look at why that is. Let's come into the iterator, and we can see that this linkage is improperly named. We actually renamed that field. So this is something that happens quite often. You'll set up an automation connected to a specific field. You'll rename the field thinking you need to organize or just rename it to something better, and it breaks your automation. So we have two audio plus video arrays right here. We are linked to this one, but we actually renamed that field to this right here. So we're gonna have to switch out this array to this option right here. Click OK. I'll save it one more time, save anyway, run it again, run anyway, jump into Airtable, uncheck assemble, and recheck it. Let's jump into make, and there we go. We have those two clips running through the JSON modules now. So we have that data in the aggregator. Let's click on the aggregator, and what we needed to aggregate are the JSON elements right here. Click on that, click OK. Click the plus to create a new module. This will be a JSON module, create JSON, and we'll add a new data structure. Click add. For the data structure name, I'll come into my document. This one will be the combine clip settings. Copy that name, come back into make, paste the name, click generate. Let's go back into the doc and we'll copy all of this sample data, come back into make, paste that sample data right here, and click generate. Right away, click save. And now we can fill out this module. Follow along with me here. For the ID, it'll be this ID. For frames per second, we can say 30. For cache, no. For width, let's choose the width again. Drop down the width, choose that right there. For height, let's drop down the height. Choose that right there. For scenes, we're going to map the scenes. Click the map button, click into this field and add the array. For exports, click add item. Destinations, add item. For type, enter in webhook. And for the endpoint, we'll have to create this endpoint in Airtable. Skip that one for now, come down to content type, type in application JSON, quality, type in high, and for resolution, type in custom. Again, these are all settings. I built out these data structures to just enter in settings for JSON to video. I'm gonna click OK. All of these settings are gonna relate to the JSON to video modules and how JSON to video actually constructs their videos. So a lot of these names are relating simply back to the JSON to video specifications for creating videos. Again, this took me a long time to figure out how to make these, but once you have completed a data structure, these data structures actually save into your make account. Just to look at that real quick, I'm gonna come over to my sidebar, click on data structures, and if we take a look, all of the data structures I've created pop up in this list right here. So once you create a data structure, it's going to save into your make account. You won't have to do this every single time. You'll have a data structure ready to go for another JSON module if you wanted to do something similar. So we need to finish off this module with the endpoint. Let's jump into Airtable. Come into the automations tab. We're going to create a new automation, but let's simply duplicate this one. Merge clips back from JSON to video. I'll duplicate that. Come up here to rename it. Call this combined clips back from JSON to video. And this will be the one that's waiting on that webhook from us. Come into the webhook trigger. We can copy the webhook example, come into make and paste that in the endpoint right here. Then click OK. Click the plus to create a new module. This will be JSON to video. Scroll down to create a movie from JSON, and we'll add in the JSON string from the last module. Click OK. Now let's push some data down this, create that video, and trigger that last webhook in Airtable to get this one finalized. I'll click save, click run once, come into Airtable, come into the data, uncheck assemble, and recheck it. Jump into make, watch it run through. There it goes, and we're in JSON to video. JSON to video is combining all of our clips. If we jump back into Airtable, that video needs to pop up right here, but we haven't finished off that final automation, so we'll have to manually run that automation the first time to get that to trigger and come through. So we can check our JSON to video account, check the render logs, refresh, and that video is done. Come back into Airtable, come into the automations tab. We can see now in our automation here, the step was successful. We can flip on the automation. We got that webhook back from JSON to video. Let's finish this update a record action. Click onto that. And we need to update the new field here. I'll delete out this one, trash it. We need to switch out the table here. We're actually working in the assembly table. We'll come into the table, choose the assembly table. Record ID can remain the same. Now we can find the combined video field. Click the plus in the webhook. In the body, we find the URL. Click update to save the changes. And now we can manually run this automation for the first time to get that record to update. Let's scroll down, choose run as configured, click run test. And if we scroll down, we can see the updated record. We have that video now in our combined video field. So I'm going to jump back into the data, and there it is. Guys, that is it for this automation chain. One more to go to finish off the video. Let's do it. So I'm going to jump back into the automations tab. I'm going to drag this one down, click the 6 little dots, move it under our combined clips trigger here. I'll create a new trigger. I'll right click on this one, click duplicate. I'll drag this one down to the bottom, come up here to rename it. Let's name it add music and finalize. I'll toggle it on, come into the trigger, change the conditions. In the assembly table, when music is not empty, when combined video is not empty. So we have our music, we have our combined video, and assemble is checked. Click update to save the changes. Come into run a script action. For the action variable, we can change this to finalize video. Click update to save the changes. One more time, I'll copy this variable, come into make, and we'll create our next automation chain here. I'll click the plus on the main route. This will create a new module. I'll click on the big plus, create a router. I'll delete both of these default routes. Right click on this module to clone it and stick it to our new router. Come down, hit the auto align button, and we've got our last route down here. Right away, I'm gonna come into the little wrench to create a filter, set up a filter. The condition is where the action is equal to, and I'll paste in our variable right there. Click OK. Let's right click on this router, rename it, add music and finalize, click OK. And we can double check the settings in this Airtable module, base, table, assembly, record, record ID, click OK. Let's click the plus to create a new module. This will be JSON, create JSON, and we'll add a new data structure. Click add, rename the data structure. Let's jump into the document. This will be final video settings. Copy that, come into make, paste the name right here, click generate, come back into the doc, copy the JSON string, come into make, paste the sample data and click generate. Right away, come down, click save, and we've got this new module to fill out. Before I forget, let's go ahead, follow along, filling this one out for the ID. It's the ID for frames per second. It's 30. Width, we'll drop down that, choose the width. For height, we'll drop down that and choose the height. For scenes, let's add item. Item 1, add item under elements. For the source, this will be the combined video. Drop this down, URL. For the type, it's video. For the volume, we'll say 1. For the duration, this is -1. Click add item. For item 2, the source, this will be the music URL. For the type, audio. For the volume, we're going to say 0.4, and for the duration, -2. This is saying use the entire length of the video, and this is saying set the length based on the length of the video. In English, that's pretty much what's going on. For exports, click add item. Destinations, add item. For the type, this will be webhook. For the endpoint, you know what to do. We'll skip this one for now. Come into content type, type in application JSON. For the quality, we'll say hi. And now we can create that automation in Airtable to get that endpoint. Let's jump into Airtable. Going to duplicate this combined clips back from JSON to video. Right click on it, click duplicate. Now I'll just grab this one, click the 3 little dots, drag it down to the bottom. I'll come up here to rename it. Final video back from JSON to video. We need to get that webhook endpoint. Let's click into the trigger, copy the webhook example, come into make, paste it into the endpoint, and click OK. Now, while we're here, let's go ahead and rename these last 2 JSON modules we worked on. So this one, we can start off, right click on it, rename. Let's come into the doc. That is going to be final video settings. Come back into make, and we'll paste that name right there. Click OK. Moving back up, right click on this one, click rename, come into the doc, and this one is combine clip settings. Click OK, and let's add our final module. Click the plus, create a new module. This is JSON to video. Scroll down, create a movie from JSON, and we'll add in the JSON string from the last module, and click OK. Guys, that is it. I think we did it. Let's give it a little test run. I'll click save, click run once. We'll jump into Airtable. Now to trigger the automation to get the finished video, if we check the automations tab, we'll come down to our add music and finalize automation here. We'll check the trigger when music is not empty, combined video is not empty, and assemble is checked. So let's go ahead, jump into the data, and we'll trigger this automation by adding in our music clip. So I've been working with Suno to create a method of automating the music generation, but for now I'll jump into my Suno account, and I've generated a bunch of music in here that I can use for any of my projects, and this one, Whispers in the Dark, is good for these mysterious videos. So I'm gonna download that one, jump back into Airtable, and drop my music clip in here. Once that loads in, that will trigger the automation and run that final chain. If we jump back into make, we should watch this one run down. There it is. Now that video request has been sent to JSON to video. Let's jump back into Airtable, jump into the automations. And as soon as that comes back, we could finish this one off here. Looks like that ran successfully. Let's go ahead and flip on this final video back from JSON to video. We can configure the update record action here. We're in the assembly table. I'll come over and trash this field, click choose field, and we'll update the finished video. Click the plus in the webhook in the body, find the URL, and click update to save the changes. Now we'll have to run this automation manually for the first time. Scroll down here on the right side, click run as configured, click run test, and we can see that update our record there. Let's jump into the data, and there it is. Guys, we are finished. We have finished the automation. Jump into make and save it. Let's jump back into Airtable and just finalize everything, clean everything up. Let's jump into the stories table, into our all stories view, and we can see our finished video right there in our test story record. Congratulations, making it through this entire thing. Well done. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd love to see the content you guys are making with this automation. I will see you in the group. Check it out below. I've got the link to my school community in the description of this video. If you want to see more automations like this, if you want to hang out with people that are building automations like this, join up in the group. We're working in Airtable. We're working in make.com, getting into N8N. I'm helping you with your business workflow automation, content creation, social media. We've got free live Q&A sessions on Tuesdays. And I've got a ton of resources in the classroom for you to check out and help you with your builds. I look forward to seeing you in the group, and I'll see you in the next one.